when you look at those things and you see that the ethics and the rules don't really apply.
Sounds like Burisma. Remember the company in Ukraine?
But if it was bad then,
that's my
why are you
question.
If it was bad then, why are you doing it now?
If you're
critical as I was.
Because it has to do with the ballroom, right?
No,
but it does. And that's my
ballroom.
point. So there are rules and regulations and regulatory bodies that the Trump family doesn't believe applies to them. And so when we're talking about the commission, when you get rid of the commission so you can push through things, I think that it shows that you believe ethics don't.
In today's video, Bakari Sellers absolutely wrecks Betsy McCaughey on Newsnight with Abby Phillip. The debate gets heated as Betsy defends Trump's latest moves, like disbanding a federal architectural commission and blurring the lines between politics, business, and ethics, while Bakari comes in swinging with facts that completely dismantle her arguments, from Trump's questionable Pentagon contracts to his obsession with personalizing public spaces. Bakari exposes how all of this points to a deeper erosion of democratic norms and accountability. So let's dive in and watch how Bakari Sellers shuts down Betsy McCaughey on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Well, I say, first of all, good riddance to this commission. It's a group of elitists who don't share the aesthetic or artistic tastes of most Americans.
They're architects.
For example, they are architects, and you know what? They're artistic.
I love the former lieutenant governor talking about elitists, but okay.
Cian, right, who was the chair of this commission until recently, is responsible for probably the ugliest public building in America, the new Obama Center in Chicago, which is this huge concrete, bulbous, misshaping structure that really mars the Chicago landscape. It looks like an ode to the gulag. So don't trust his taste. And Trump is abiding by what most Americans want, which is public architecture that is monumental, maybe gold, and patriotic. And I say go for it.
I mean,
that's what
I don't know what this
I
is
just
about.
want you to know she came prepared and loaded for bear for this segment.
She was
I am
ready.
so glad to see
She was ready to go.
Can I just say, all of this stuff makes me want to scream, because at least if you're going to consolidate this much power, at least be original. At least don't, you know, copy every single authoritarian who came before you, who also did, you know, every single one of them, Putin, Stalin, all of them.
Barack Obama adding a basketball court.
It went through a federal review.
Say that I know what good taste is, I know what art is, I know what portraiture is, I know what poetry is, I know what music is. And so I'm going to determine what the nation hears, because my taste is the nation's taste.
But it's also a direct.
The personalization of it is just so utter.
You can really tell where Julia Loft is coming from in this exchange. She's calling out something that goes way beyond just architecture. The whole argument about making buildings more monumental and patriotic sounds harmless until you realize what's actually underneath it: control. Throughout history, authoritarian leaders have used architecture not just to build things, but to project power and shape national identity in their own image. When Betsy McCaughey dismisses experts as elitists, that's not populism, it's anti-intellectualism. Architects, designers, and historians exist for a reason: to make sure public spaces reflect everyone's heritage, not just one man's ego or nostalgia. And let's be real, Trump's idea of monumental architecture often just means bigger, flashier, and more self-glorifying. It's less about celebrating America and more about cementing his personal brand into history. That's why Julia's frustration makes sense. It's not about taste, it's about intent. A government that tries to dictate what American beauty should look like is treading dangerous ground. That's how you end up with buildings that look more like propaganda than public service. Even the claim that Trump's aesthetic reflects what most Americans want doesn't hold up. Surveys from the American Institute of Architects show that most Americans actually prefer diversity in design, buildings that reflect local culture, innovation, and community identity. So when power gets consolidated in a single vision, that's not democracy, that's design by decree. Julia's right. This isn't just about ugly buildings. It's about the slow erosion of checks, balance, and originality in how a nation defines itself.
Really unoriginal.
There is I've used through line twice tonight, but there is a direct through line between just the destruction of impediments in their way, and the fact that rules, ethics don't really govern the Trump White House. And before you take umbrage to it, let me tell you what my through line is. I think when you look at reports that the Trump Corporation this year has made over $850 million already, 800 million just from a crypto coin, that foreign governments have put money in to influence what's going on in this country. When you look at the fact that they are Don Jr., for example, who doesn't necessarily have a skill set, but he sits on the board of a drone company that he invested $4 million in, which just won a Pentagon contract. When you look at those things and you see that the ethics and the rules don't really apply.
Sounds like Burisma. Remember the company in Ukraine?
But if it was bad then,
that's my
why
question.
did you?
Did you have-
If it was bad then, why are you doing it now?
I said-
critical
I said it
as
wasn't
I
you guys.
was.
Because it has to do with the ballroom, right?
No,
But it does. And that's
again,
my
if
that's
it
my
was-
that's my point. So there are rules and regulations and regulatory bodies that the Trump family doesn't believe applies to them. And so when we're talking about the commission, when you get rid of the commission so you can push through things, I think that it shows that you believe ethics don't matter. And so yeah, I'm glad you brought up Burisma, because that was a talking point for 4 years. And you know what? If Hunter Biden committed something unethical, whatever, it was wrong and bad. But if I can say that, why can't you say that
I
it's wrong?
don't see anything unethical yet. I haven't heard any.
You don't know that Donald Trump Jr. sits on a board right now that he invested $4 million in that got a Pentagon contract?
What about
Or
the fact that
the
the
members
president
club.
just, what about the fact that
What I'd like to say
what
is
about the
that-
fact that the president just pardoned the head of Binance, and now all of a sudden that very same company, now able to operate fully in the United States, is promoting the Trump crypto platform. So that is also a thing that literally just happened.
Can I
in the last
come-
Or
Can I
Donald
comment
Trump
about
Jr.
frustrated
or
because I don't
Donald
know.
Trump
But I do know all of a
Jr.
sudden-
It's wild how Betsy McCaughey keeps trying to deflect every legitimate concern with, what about Hunter Biden? Like that's some kind of magic shield for Trump's ethics issues. The reality is, what Bakari Sellers and Abby Phillip are pointing out here isn't about partisanship, it's about accountability. You can't claim to drain the swamp while swimming laps in it. The Trump family's entanglement in private business ventures while holding public power isn't speculation. It's documented. According to multiple reports, Trump-affiliated companies raked in hundreds of millions from foreign entities during his presidency, and many of those deals raised red flags about conflicts of interest and possible violations of the Emoluments Clause. And that crypto situation Abby referenced. That's not conspiracy talk. It's a reflection of how political influence is being monetized in real time. A former Binance executive was pardoned, and suddenly the same ecosystem is promoting Trump-branded tokens. It's a cycle of profit wrapped in patriotism, and it reeks of corruption. When public office becomes a family business, transparency disappears. Bakari's point about ethics boards and commissions being dismantled matters too. Those institutions exist to prevent exactly this kind of blurred line between governance and self-enrichment. Once you start removing oversight, you open the door for unchecked power, and that's how democracies decay. What's ironic is how McCaughey calls liberals elitist, but ignores how Trump's inner circle is cashing in while pretending to represent everyday Americans. Meanwhile, those everyday Americans can't even dream of affording $500,000 memberships to Trump's exclusive clubs. Abby and Bakari are right. This isn't leadership. It's profiteering disguised as populism.
Cannot
Or
comment.
Donald Trump Jr. opening up an exclusive members-only club where he and other Trump family members socialize, and the cost of membership is $500,000. Speaking of everyday Americans who
Right.
have half a million dollars to spare in a
Pretty
club
pricey.
membership.
But let me ask you
So
something.
is that okay?
Do you think that the
buy
president, who's
access to the
empowered by the
president's children?
Constitution to control the armed forces, shouldn't have the power to build a ballroom?
He should have all the power. He should do whatever he wants. Like a
I'm just
dictator.
saying,
It'll
it
be
seems
great.
ridiculous.
Let me just
I
play
think
this
what's
because
clear is that like none of the rules actually matter, right? Like how fragile our democracy really
Well, they
is.
matter for
how the
our perceived
rules-
enemies.
But
Well-
like this is the thing. Like if the administration decides, you know what, we don't want to follow the rules. We're going to do whatever we want. There really aren't
Guardrails.
guardrails.
So
exactly.
Julia brought
This
up
commission did not
earlier.
have the power to
Julia
stop
brought
the
up
ballroom.
earlier in the
care
conversation
that
that
much
she
about the
thinks
ballroom,
that
gotta
what
be
this is
honest.
all about is Trump doesn't want to leave. He's building, these sort of edifices that he wants to enjoy for a long time. He's also been asked about and talked about having a third term, and here's what he said on Monday about that.
haven't really thought about it. We have some very good people, as you know, but I have the best poll numbers I've ever had. I would love to do it. I have my best numbers ever. It's very terrible. I have my best numbers. If you read it, am I not ruling it out? You'll have to tell me. All I can tell you is that we have a great group of people, which they don't.
As with a lot of things with Trump, he could just say the Constitution bars me from having a third term, and he won't say it, which kind of feeds into what Julia was saying earlier today.
I think he likes that we're talking about this right now. I mean, but look, as far as the ballroom goes, Trump has had a bee in his bonnet about this ballroom since the Obama administration, when he said that he reached out to David Axelrod, wanted to give Obama $100 million. This is a lot less than. You're talking about that earring. He wanted to give Obama money to build the ballroom. He's wanted to do it since then. And in another Washington Post article, there was reporting that Biden and Obama staffers were saying, we need this.
Yes.
People were in porta potties.
And look,
I gotta say, to hear the outrage from the left, though, it feels extremely ironic that these are the same people celebrating statues being torn down of George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and now there's concern about erasing history. It kind of feels like the outrage is all over.
Well, let me just say that I wasn't a big statue taker downer. That wasn't my ministry. I wasn't a big.
Speaking for himself.
I wasn't a big.
But can I just? Here's the thing about the ballroom and this
Robert E. Lee
commission.
doesn't belong up.
I wonder if there is any reasonable point to make that there should be somebody who has some context for history and for architecture that takes a look at a plan for a ballroom that is supposed to be bigger than the actual White House itself, and what that will do to the structure, to the landscape of the White House compound.
It's kind of wild watching Betsy McCauley and Lyndia Moynihan defend this whole let Trump do whatever he wants mentality, like the presidency is a personal playground. The irony is that the Constitution they claim to respect was literally written to prevent that kind of unchecked power. Abby Phillip and Julia Ioffe are absolutely right to be worried, because once a leader starts blurring the lines between personal ambition and public duty, democracy stops being about governance and starts being about self-interest. What's really unsettling is how normalized this behavior has become. When a president casually floats the idea of a third term, something explicitly barred by the 22nd Amendment, that's not just trolling the media, that's testing boundaries. And history shows us where that leads. Leaders like Putin and Xi started the same way, joking about extensions of power before rewriting the rules entirely. So yeah, it's not overreacting to take that seriously. And let's not gloss over the ethical red flags here. The ballroom isn't about hosting state dinners, it's about legacy building, image, and ego. When you start dismantling oversight commissions and ignoring architectural review processes, it's not just about aesthetics, it's about eroding accountability. Experts exist to make sure public resources aren't abused, and getting rid of them because they're elitist is a convenient way to dodge scrutiny. Meanwhile, Betsy and Lyndia's argument about statues being torn down is just classic distraction politics. It's easier to pivot to culture wars than to confront the reality that Trump's administration keeps bending and breaking the rules. Julia and Abby are right to call that out, because if no one does, the idea of limits on presidential power becomes just pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.